Well, let's talk about the types of bankruptcies, because I guess there are two chapters, 7 and 13. How does that? I mean, if a typical person, I come in to talk to you, what do you usually tell me?
Well, usually what I'm going to do is do a little bit of a review of their financial situation. Under the Bankruptcy Reform Act, I have to kind of figure out what their income and expenses are to see what chapters are available to them.
Okay.
There's actually several chapters.
Okay.
For an individual, you're primarily looking at a Chapter 7 liquidation,
Right.
where you're looking to get your debts wiped out.
Is that all debts go by the wayside?
Well, if you're going to hold on to your house, you'd have to keep the mortgage payment.
Okay.
So there's certain debts that if you're going to hold on to the asset that's secured by the loan, you have to keep up on that loan. But if you're going to surrender that property or that vehicle, then you can get the loan wiped out as well.
Okay.
Chapter 13 is the adjustment of debts for individuals. Now, one of the things that's a little bit tricky with that is a lot of people now, if they have a couple investment properties, have too much secured debt to really file the Chapter 13, and they could end up in a Chapter 11.
Oh.
Chapter 11 is the reorganization, and when you usually hear that, that's on the news, and it's something about some large company that's filing a Chapter 11 reorganization. But with the debt limits on secured debt being $922,000, person has a $400,000 mortgage and a couple investment properties, all of a sudden they're stuck in a Chapter 11, much more complicated process. Some other chapters are Chapter 12 for family farmers, Chapter 9 for municipalities, and a Chapter 15 for a cross-border case. But yeah, most individuals, what we're looking to do is can they do a Chapter 7, or if they have enough income or they're over the median income for the state of Maryland, are they going to have to at least pay back some of their debt through a Chapter 13 reorganization?
Okay, so suppose I work with you and you figure out that a Chapter 7 would work best for me, and where most of the debt is going to be wiped out. What are some things that I'm obligated to pay no matter what?
Well, if you're going to hold on to your house, if you're current on your house and you don't have any equity in that house or very little equity, we could do the Chapter 7 if it's primarily a credit card debt problem or a medical bill problem. Get those bills wiped out. The other thing that sometimes we're doing it for is if the person lost a vehicle through repossession and they've got a deficiency, we're getting that wiped out. But if you have a car loan, if you're going to keep that car, you're going to have to pay that.
Okay. Okay, what about, like, for instance, so many people in society have these very large student loans when they went to college. Do those get wiped out during these proceedings?
If it's a federal guaranteed student loan, which most of them are, the federal government writes the rules. You're not going to get your federal government debts wiped out or any loans that they've guaranteed. So the student loans you're pretty much stuck with, and you're going to have to pay those as a general rule, as you would with any taxes or state fines or federal fines.
Now, some might consider bankruptcy to be desirable. It sounds like you walk in, you work with an attorney, and these debts are just wiped out, and you start again, essentially. But there is the flip side, the negative side. What are, besides the social stigma, what are some of the real negatives to actually get to that point of declaring bankruptcy? Well,
I suppose one of the things that I always am surprised by is the number of people who, when they have all this credit card debt, they're behind on their mortgage, and they say, but I'm worried about my credit score. And I always think, it's a little late for that. By the time you've come to see me, filing for bankruptcy kind of gets you back to zero on your credit score, and you're going to rebuild from then. And really the rules are such, and Maryland has always had a rather strict interpretation or slant on the bankruptcy rules, is you're not going to qualify for a bankruptcy until your situation's pretty bad.
Okay.
So you don't worry about your credit score by the time you come to see me, and usually you're going to be able to reestablish your credit score pretty easily. Strangely enough, the first people who are sending you credit applications tend to be the very credit card companies that push through the Bankruptcy Reform Act.
Interesting.
They would complain about the fact that it was just too easy to file for bankruptcy, but they're the first ones to turn to you and try to make money off of you after you file.
So let's walk through this. So basically, I talk to you, David, and you say, it looks like I'm a good candidate for bankruptcy. What are the next steps after that?
Well, one of the first things I'm trying to do is to get people to look at their options. Okay, you want to save your house. Well, is that really a possibility here? Once we, if we file a Chapter 13 to help you get caught up on a mortgage arrears, well, if you couldn't afford the mortgage payment, is that problem behind you? Because it's not very likely that if things haven't changed that you're going to be able to afford to make the regular mortgage payment plus a trustee payment to get caught up on the arrears if you've got an adjustable rate that's about to jump again. So sometimes I'm telling people, look, it's time to let this house go. You know, if you had a small business and you made $60,000 last year, and next year, gee, you know, things probably aren't going to turn around. You're only going to be making 30 again. It's time to let this house that's $300,000 on a mortgage, time to let that go possibly. So that's one of the tough things, is telling people, no, it's time to cut your losses and move on.
And do you find that most people listen to your advice, or do you find some really bullheaded people who just want to go it alone?
Well, I'll have a lot of people who will say, no, I understand what you're saying, but I got to try to save it. And we start out in that Chapter 13, and well, I can't predict. Sometimes there's people who I think there's no way they're going to make it through, and somehow by eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they make it through. There's other people who I think, well, they should be able to do this, and then, you know, well, as the ad says, life happens and something comes up again, and they fall behind and they just can't save it.